How does the Higgs field, quote unquote, give things mass? The first important thing to note is that 99% of the mass out there isn't generated by the Higgs field. It's actually generated by the interactions between quarks and things like protons and neutrons. For the mass that the Higgs field does generate, usually the metaphor that is used is imagine walking through water. Walking through water is harder to do than walking on land. The water pushes back on you. Imagine that the water is the Higgs field. I've covered mass energy equivalents in my previous video, but any amount of energy can correspond to a certain amount of mass. Now, interacting with fields takes energy. You know this if you've ever put two like magnetic poles together. They'll repel, and to push them closer to each other, you need to push on them. You need to expend energy. That is just field interaction. Now, things that have mass are interacting with the Higgs field all the time, which means there is a certain amount of energy that is used to interact with it all the time. And that energy is its mass. That's why if you look at the measurements of the masses of fundamental particles like an electron or like the Higgs boson, they'll be measured not in what you would think you would measure mass with, like grams, but instead in giga-electron volts, which is a unit of energy. But energy is equivalent to mass, so even though we measure it as a form of energy, we are essentially measuring its mass. So like the mass of the Higgs boson is 125.35 giga-electron volts, give or take. Again, if you think of the Higgs field as like water, that's the energy expended to move through the water. That's the energy expended interacting with the water, as opposed to photons, which don't interact with the Higgs field, and they would be, running on land.